The heir of the heavenly demon cult was dying. He sat in his dimly lit chamber, his breath slow, his pulse weak. The rarest medicine in the land, the price medicine of Hab, had failed him. His lower chi core had been shattered from birth, leaving him unable to store internal energy. Without martial arts, he had clawed his way to the top, relying only on mystic arts to survive. But it wasn't enough. Not to repay his master, not to secure his place as heir, and not to stop the betrayal that was already closing in. A soft knock broke the silence. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" The heir's grip on his teacup tightened. He didn't need to look up to recognize the voice. Chan Hain, the vice cult leader. He turned his gaze toward the doorway, meeting Hain's polite but insincere smile. "You've been well, I assume?" Hain asked, stepping into the room. The heir studied him. Something was wrong. "It has been a long time," he replied, voice unreadable. Hain folded his hands behind his back, glancing around the lavish chamber. "With the cult leader ill and you." His eyes flickered over the heir's frail frame. "Unable to carry out your duties, someone had to ensure the prosperity of the cult." A pause. "I see," the heir said at last. "I'm truly grateful for your efforts." His tone was cold. Hain smiled, but his eyes remained sharp. Neither man spoke the truth aloud, but they both knew a storm was coming. Later that night, the heir sat alone in his chamber, staring at the teacup before him. The tea was sweeter than usual. "There's no way that snake just went on a trip to check on the people." He lifted the cup to his lips, a strange taste. Then, a sharp pain erupted in his chest. His fingers trembled, his vision blurred. "To think he would strike the moment I returned to my own chambers." A chuckle escaped him despite the agony. He placed the teacup down and exhaled slowly. Above him, in the shadows of the rafters, movement. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. "Since you went through all the trouble of bringing me such fine liquor, would you care for a drink as well?" Silence, then, "Kill him." Figures descended like falling daggers. Assassins. They struck fast, too fast for a poisoned man to react. Blades pierced his chest. Except they didn't. The moment their weapons touched him, his body flickered. An illusion. From across the room, the real heir stood, his eyes glowing with a deep violet aura. "If you wanted to kill me in my own chamber." He lifted his hand, chains materializing from the darkness behind him. "You should have prepared much more." The assassins barely had time to react. The chains shot forward, impaling them where they stood. Blood splattered against the walls. The room fell silent. Hain stepped forward, his face unreadable. "The crane's red beak is a poison, said to melt an ox with a single pinch," he mused, watching Wei carefully. "Yet here you are, still standing. A monster, indeed." Wei wiped at his lips, eyes gleaming with amusement. "If my body were in better condition, I would have put a hole in your head already." Hain's expression darkened. "Tch, if only you had done your job as heir, none of this would be necessary." We chuckled. "Right, because the elders suddenly grew the backbone to commit treason all on their own." He glanced at them. Some flinched, others stiffened. "Cowards." "This isn't just your doing, is it?" We continued, his tone almost amused. "An order from outside the cult, perhaps?" The heir turned frigid. Hain's fingers curled, a frost forming around his hand. "How dare you accuse me of harming my own master?" He lunged. Ice slammed into Wei's chest, sending him crashing against the far wall. Before he could react, Hain's hand was around his throat, lifting him effortlessly. "No matter how much I despise you," Hain growled, "we trained under the same master. And as the acting leader of this cult, I will end your miserable life with my own hands." But instead of fear, Wei laughed. "Planned all of this, have you?" he rasped, a smirk curling on his bloody lips. "You should drop the act. Your lack of wits is exactly why you're a puppet." Hain's grip tightened, but Wei kept smiling. The air in the room shifted. A deep, crushing pressure began to leak from Wei's body, thick as a storm cloud. The elders stiffened. Hain frowned. "You still think you have a chance?" Wei moved. His hand shot into his robes, a flash of metal. Hain's eyes widened. "The demon dragon sword." Panic flickered across his face. You dare cause trouble even in your final moments? Hain growled, reaching for the sword. The moment his fingers touched the hilt, boom! A shock wave of violet energy blasted him across the room. Hain barely caught himself, breathing hard. You've gathered this much mystic power already? We stood, slowly, steadily. The sword pulsed in his hand, as if whispering to him. All of it, we admitted. Every last drop of my mystic power poured into this blade. It carries the will of the first heavenly demon. His smirk deepened. And while I was playing along, pretending to defend against your pathetic attacks, he lifted the sword. This is what I was really preparing for. The elders panicked. Block it, someone shouted. They desperately summoned their chi, barriers forming. But it was too late. The sword rose into the air, pulsating with a deep, malevolent glow. We whispered its name, the soul-combusting hellflame art. A pulse. Then, darkness. A pressure heavier than death itself filled the chamber. The light vanished. The air became thick, suffocating. The elders screamed as the force ripped them apart. Hain barely had time to comprehend his own death. No! 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 His final scream was swallowed by the explosion. Outside, the world stilled. Then, a detonation so powerful it warped space itself. The entire palace was erased, and in the center of the ruins, Yan Wei sat, staring up at the falling snow. He chuckled weakly, blood staining his lips. Huh. Even after all this, I didn't expect to die like this. The cold wind whispered against his skin. For a moment, he wasn't the heir of a shattered cult. He was just a boy, watching the snow fall, listening to the voices of ghosts only he could hear. But this time, the ghosts wouldn't haunt him. They would come for them. Snow flowing around him is making him remember of when he was younger. We see some kids kicking the hell out of him, and they start to make fun of him because he can see ghosts. One of them says that if he tells him once more that he's carrying an evil spirit, he'll make sure he has a terrible time. They even start to make fun of how his lower core is broken, and they say that if they were him, they would have killed themselves a long time ago. Wu looks at a rock on the ground and he reaches for it, picking it up, saying that he simply said what he saw. But all he got was hatred. He leaps off the ground, dashing at the man who just beat him up, and we see blood flying. Wu says they didn't really have the temper to stay. We only hear them yelling, and Wu says that they don't know when to give up. Just like the spirits, we see them floating in front of him, and he asked for them to piss off. We then hear somebody tell Wu that he has special eyes and he gets afraid, wondering how long this dude's been here since he couldn't even feel his presence judging. Based on his expensive-looking clothes and even more expensive-looking sword, this place is far from the forest path as well, so he must have come for him specifically. We starts to laugh, but in a sad tone, saying he must be interested in his cursed eyes, and he can take them if he wants, as he's used to a life where hatred and disrespect is so natural. The person asks if they can really just have them, and Wei says that, based on their appearance, they look like a master of martial arts. So what would resisting even accomplish? He says he doesn't know if these eyes can act as a medicine for their powers or not, but they can pull them out, eat them, or do whatever. The person quickly puts this coat around World War II, saying those eyes are no curse. Rather, they are a blessing. Some people like him are born with a blessed upper energy core or with a special streak in their soul, and those children always end up doing great things. We says the words sounded so sweet he would have definitely just thought they were lies. The person continues saying that he has the potential to become more special than anyone else in the world. But we was already falling for it, because that was the first time he ever felt warmth in his entire life. The person asked if he would follow him, and Wu said yes, and this is how he met his master, the heavenly demon. When the heavenly demon asked if he had a name, Wei says no, the heavenly demon says that, to commemorate the moment he met him, he would like to give him the name Wu, which gave him a new reason to live. We see Wu sitting there saying he did whatever he could to help his master, but because of his damn body, his master fell into a state of energy, deviation and accepting death. Here would be too pitiful, even though his body is about to keel over. No matter what he does, his body is done for. So there is only one way out of this. He slams his hands into the ground as a golden energy starts to emit from it. He says that he is using the forbidden art of Zor, as ISM called the primordial divine wheel of reincarnation, which will allow him to overcome death by transferring his soul to another body. Even if it does succeed, he is destined to live a short life due to the body's rejection of the soul. He is using the remaining mystic energy from the fragments of the demon dragon sword to activate this art, and now he will just leave it up to the heavens. He looks over at his master's palace and begs that he hold on as the yellow aura starts to bloom into a lotus flower. It opens up, shooting a beam to the sky, and Wei says once more he hopes his master stays safe until he returns. His vision goes completely black until he hears some woman yapping at him. She says that is the son of a concubine. He should continue to keep low. He says his whole body is numb and tingling. And waking up to the sound of screeching is just the worst. He then jolts awake, asking if the wheel of reincarnation really succeeded. And we hear the woman call him Tang, Mooney asking if he's listening, telling him to get up off the damn floor. Huan stands up, saying it's ironic that he still has the same first name as his last body. The woman, on the other hand, says that she's been emphasizing this since earlier. She raises her beating stick into the air, asking how dare he not respond to her. But he stops her mid-swing, saying that her breath reeks, asking if she could face away when talking to him, and even calls her an old hag. She looks annoyed and asks how dare he refuse her teachings and even insult her. And then she slams the door, telling him not to even dream of exiting until he understands his mistakes. Wu sits on the bed, sighing out of relief, saying finally he can have some peace and quiet. As he sifted through the remnants of this body's memories, one fact stood out. This boy had died at her hands. She had beaten him to death. He thought his old life was pitiful, but this one, it might just rival it. Physically, this body was weak. It had barely been trained, its health was poor, and yet it possessed something his last body had lacked: a lower energy core. Wui's lips curled into a smirk. If I can train my lower core to master martial arts on top of the mystic arts I learned with my upper core, his fingers clenched into fists. And if I use the power of my eyes to control the dead, I'll create something the world has never seen. His voice hardened. No, it's not a matter of if. It's a necessity. Only then can I protect my master. Only then can I show those bastards who backstab me that they picked the wrong damn fight. That's it for today from Vivify. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.